10 a.m. right here in Lagos, Nigeria. Good morning, good evening, wherever you're watching from. It's Business Morning live on Channels Television. I'm Ladi Williams. First off, let's take a look at what's happening with oil prices this morning. We see how the prices eased following weak U.S. payrolls and the same some profit taking, but it remained underpinned by tight supply as OPEC Plus producers stuck to planned moderate output increases. Brent crude fell 17 cents to $89.30 a barrel after rising 31 cents on Wednesday. U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude was down about 31 cents at $87.95 a barrel, having gained about 6 cents in the previous day. U.S. private payrolls fell for the first time in a year in January, raising the risk of a sharp decline in employment that could deal a temporary setback to the labor market. Still, tight global supplies and geopolitical tensions in Eastern Europe and the Middle East have boosted oil prices by about 15% so far this year. Over the past week, crude benchmarks hit their highest prices since October 2014, with U.S. crude rising to as much as $89.72 a barrel on Wednesday, and Brent touching $91.70 on Friday. It looks like that $100 mark is in view right now. All right, back here, a bill seeking to raise punishment for insider fraud by bank employees to a 20-year jail term has passed second reading in the House of Representatives. The bill, sponsored by Representative Francis Wive, also seeks a yearly review of assets of bank employees to check fraud. The bill will also clearly define bank employees to include board members and persons affiliated with the banks. Do take a listen.
First is to ensure that the banks have up-to-date data that is updated yearly on their staff, so that when there are infractions, it's easy to trace the staff who is involved. We're in a day when bank fraud has increased with the Yahoo business that the young people are doing. But more importantly, it is to increase the punishment for bank staff who are involved in fraudulent activities in customers' accounts. The aim here is to increase punishment to up to 20 years imprisonment to serve as a deterrent, so that this upsurge we are seeing today in fraudulent activities in bank accounts will drop to minimum or even eliminated completely.
Welcome back now to our first conversation. Well, the signing of the Finance Act 2021 into law by President Muhammadu Buhari on 31st of December brought further sweeping changes to the Nigerian tax regime with notable implications for businesses across various sectors, and the educational sector was not included. To drill down on this now, we have Yesterday Fulani, Senior Manager, Tax Advisory and Regulatory Services at Anderson. Great to have you on the program. Good morning.
Thank you very much. Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so the way the finance bill is, set up, the act, from the bill to the act, it's quite confusing, For those of us that don't understand, can you break it down? Because I know it first started in 2019.
Yes, so what happened was that we had issues, with amending our tax laws, because essentially there's a long legislative process to amending tax laws. So part of the initiative of the Presidential Enabling Business Environment Council, that's PEBEC, to aid the ease of doing business, was to introduce, this omnibus bills or finance bills to kind of hasten the process, of providing the necessary amendments. So what you have, first of all, is the bill, and which is sent along with the appropriation bill. And when it is passed into law, it now becomes an act of the National Assembly.
Right, and we're calling it the 2021 Act because that's when it was...
It was passed in 2021.
It was signed, okay.
Yes.
Great, but, since the introduction in, 2019, what is your overall, assessment of the tax system?
Okay. I would say that the 2019 bill or act, was actually necessary. It was a fast, quick process of amending and introducing necessary changes, to promote ease of doing business, and obviously to also help the tax system and the fiscal system. And year on year, we've also had the Finance Act that goes with appropriation bill. It's a good initiative. However, you now have to question the ease of understanding the tax systems in Nigeria, because essentially, for you to be sure of how your taxing regime or how certain things apply to you, you have to look at you have to look at the acts. So, say for instance, the Companies Income Tax Act, the Finance Act 2019, 20, right, and 2021. Right. So it becomes a bit cumbersome, you know. I think one of the things that the FIRS has also tried to do is to ensure that with each amendment, they actually do a compilation, you know, so that it's clear. I know that prior you could go to their website and actually have the full act, you know, which also includes the amendments that have been introduced by the Finance Act.
Quite interesting. And, you know, looking at talking about the Federal Inland Revenue Service, now we see they achieved 100% revenue target for 2021, you know, despite the issues of the pandemic. Quite interesting. How would you describe ease of paying taxes, you know, right now compared to, you know, years before?
Well, one of the key things that was introduced, you know, last year is the Taxpayer Max, which is essentially deploying technology to ease filing and remittances of tax. Because what you find is that there are actually, you know, companies that want to comply, but it could be cumbersome, you know. So right now you can just sit down from the comfort of your office, file your returns, you know, and make payments online, you know, seamlessly. And this would have been one of the contributors, you know, to helping to ease the tax system and, you know, contributing to FIRS achieving 100%, you know, which is remarkable.
Yeah, 100%. But does that translate to compliance?
Well,
to what extent?
Well, it could, because the point is that the avenue is now there. You know, you can now leverage technology to ease compliance. There would have been other factors. For instance, the VAT rate was reviewed, you know, to 7.5%, which means more revenue. And there would have been other factors. The benchmark, you know, for crude oil as well. You know, the prices of crude oil did better than what we had benchmarked. So those would have been other contributory factors to achieving 100%. But
quite interesting.
It's commendable.
Yeah, quite interesting. But before the enactment of the Finance Act 2021, you know, companies engaged in educational activities, you know, were exempt from paying company income tax. But it seems that's changing now.
Well, I will not say they were exempt completely, because we have always had it in the tax law, an exempt status for educational institutions, you know, of a public character or engaged in of public character. So the general notion was that these educational institutions were exempt from paying tax. But we did have two cases, you know, where the FIRS, you know, assessed companies to tax. The first one was the American International case, you know, which was taken to the Tax Appeal Tribunal. And the tribunal held in that case that because AIS was set up as a company limited by guarantee, that's essentially a company that cannot distribute profit, you know, by the very nature of the way it is set up, you know, and that the FIRS also did not establish that it was not of a public character. Merely charging fees, you know, cannot constitute not being of a public character. It held that, you know, they were exempted from tax. However, we had another case in Best Children International. It was a company limited by shares. A company limited by shares can distribute profit or dividend, you know, to its shareholders. It's essentially a profit-making venture. And that case went all the way to the Court of Appeal, you know, where the Court of Appeal held that because it was a company limited by shares, it means that there's an intention to make profit, you know, and distribute profit, and such company should pay tax, you know, under the law. So this was even prior to the amendment introduced by the 2021 Finance Act.
So as it looks right now, does it mean, you know, educational institutions will actually be paying tax?
So we actually had to analyze that critically, you know. So what had happened in the 2021 Finance Act, you know, that portion. So you have charitable organizations, ecclesiastical organizations, and educational. But educational organization was now deleted, you know. So I mean, off the top of your head, it now means, oh, if you're an educational institution, does that mean that you're not liable to tax? You know, we looked at it and we said, well, maybe, maybe not, because looking at the entire situation, I mean, one of the reasons that people are forced to go to private schools, you know, is because the public schools do not necessarily have the infrastructure. The teachers are not, you know, well compensated, and you know, it's an area that is struggling. So there's a school of thought that believes that shouldn't you encourage, you know, both local, foreign investors to actually participate more actively to develop that sector. So it's not so much about profit or not, but it's about development of the sector. Tertiary institutions right now, you even have Nigerians going to neighboring African countries, you know, for tertiary education because of strikes, you know, and all that. So, you know, there's that dynamics, you know. But it's important for educational institutions to review, you know, their structure and see how this amendment would apply.
Is it because the private schools, you know, seem to be making more money? Is that why, you know, the government is looking at, you know, taxing them?
Well, obviously, any business, you know, is supposed to pay tax because it's a social contract. You know, the government has its own part to play. We as citizens also have our own part to play, and you know, you should pay tax. But of course, generally, and I think all over the world, charitable, if you're set up, you know, for charitable purposes, it means that you're there for the public, you know, for the greater good, societal good, then you're usually exempt from tax. So the government trying to put these things in place, you know, there's no yes or no, you know, answer to this on whether it's right, you know, or it's not right. But, you know, it needs to be reviewed holistically, you know, and the necessary interpretations, you know, to the law should also be provided, you know, by both the FIRS and, you know, it may even require further amendments to provide clarity.
Okay, take for instance, you know, I'm an educational institution now, and I registered initially to, you know, distribute shares. Currently, what are my options right now, you know, if I, you know, want to navigate this new law?
So if you registered as a company, if you are a limited liability company, right, meaning that you have shareholders and all that, it means that you had an intention to share profits and you're not for profit, you know. So you are now liable to tax, you know. Irrespective of our feelings or anything, you know, the law is the law. It means that you need to review your position and, you know, start complying with the law if you hadn't been complying before, because I'm not even sure you had an exempt status, you know, previously based on the decision in Best Children International.
Right, so that means I'm stuck, you know, with my initial registration. So if I'm trying to actually register right now, what should I be looking at?
So, first of all, you have to look at your objective. You understand? Are you there for profit or not for profit? If you're not for profit, then there are other forms, you know, that you can take. You can maybe register as an incorporated trustee, you know, which means you essentially have trustees and you have a constitution that guides, you know, how the organization of the school is run. So those are some of the options that, you know, can be explored. But of course, you have to take a holistic look at, you know, your objectives as an institution.
It's quite interesting, but how do you see this impacting, you know, the educational sector as a whole? Because, you know, my first thought is tuitions are going to go up.
Well, that's maybe part of the unintended consequences. And that's why, for us, you know, there's a school of thought that believes that this needs to be looked at further, you know, look at the bigger picture and say, what exactly are we trying to promote, you know, as a government? We know that education is an area that requires a lot of focus, you know, from a government perspective. So how can we even encourage and develop the educational sector in Nigeria?
All right, but what are your expectations for compliance right now?
Expectations, just as I said, first of all, as an institution or educational institution, review your position, even, you know, engage your tax consultants, be sure of what exactly your form and where you should lie. Are you a company? Are you limited by shares? Are you limited by guarantee? Are you an incorporated trustee? That's, part of what you should look at. And of course, if you're a company limited by shares, because, there are also people that say, oh, even these private schools, they charge so much, they should actually, pay tax. There are some people that believe that you have to review your position. And as I said, the law is the law. You have to comply. Yeah. There's nobody that is above the law.
Exactly. And, with all these policies, talking about, foreign investment in that sector, how do you see this? How do you see the foreign investors reacting to this?
If you're an investor, then you're there to make profits. As an investor, you should expect to comply with the laws of, the jurisdiction where you're investing and pay tax, If you go to other countries, you invest and you pay tax. But if you do come in as an NGO, for instance, then there are certain concessions, charitable, that are given to those kind of charitable initiatives,
Right.
And as I said, if you're properly set up, then you would still enjoy the exempt status.
All right. Looking at other sectors now, are there any other surprises, from the Finance Act?
Oh, well, you have to do a whole holistic review, of the Finance Act. One of the key introductions is that before shares, transfer of shares was not liable to capital gains tax, but that has been reintroduced. There's now 10% capital gains tax, but there are certain conditions, so it's not in all cases that you'll be liable to capital gains tax. There's a threshold of 100 billion, and all that. I think that exemption was initially introduced, to encourage investments, but we also need the revenue, as a country. So you always have to balance it.
Yeah, because right now the government is seeking for revenue. But, what's your outlook? It's 2022, what's your outlook for, tax system in Nigeria?
Well, looking at 2021, where we ended up, meeting 100%, I think the prospects are high. More people are understanding more about the tax system and the need to also do their part, pay their taxes. The FIRS is also being more intentional, one of the key things, for us as an organization, and when we have various discussions, is that they should try to expand, tax nets rather than focusing on the people that are already compliant, So this also gives them the opportunity to expand the tax net.
We still have the informal sector, and a couple of other syntaxes, coming up with that one on sugar consumption and sugar manufacturing. All right, well, we'll keep watching, how the education sector reacts. It's still early times, right now. We'll see how stakeholders and the government actually discuss and come to an agreement at some point. All right, Ayetunde Fulani, Senior Manager, Tax Advisory and Regulatory Services at Anderson. It was great having you on the program today.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right, after the break, we have a commodities update. That's next. Do stay with us. This is Business Morning. And meanwhile, the Group of Managing Director of NNPC Limited, Mele Kyari, says the oil company is the driver for Nigeria's economic growth as it positions itself to resolve issues around energy poverty. Mr. Kyari made this known at the 38th Founders Day and 30th Convocation Ceremony of Federal University of Technology, MENA. Do take a listen.
Energy is everything. That you cannot have prosperity, you cannot have economic development except you have energy. It's not possible. Therefore, this company is the only vehicle today we have that can help us get to the position of economic development and prosperity. As we speak today, there's abject energy poverty. And of course, over 50% of our population do not have access to energy. But this can change because we have enormous resources, particularly gas resources, that we can deliver into our country and through the infrastructures that we are trying to build, so that ultimately in another 3 to 4 years, that this country will not be in the situation of energy poverty while recognizing there are issues around energy transition that are going on.
Right, now for Commodities Market Update, we have joined us Dumebi Iyeke, Research Analyst, Financial Derivatives Company. Great to have you, Dumebi.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so we see the world's powerful oil producers, agreed to a further planned increase, about 400,000 barrels. What do you think about this move?
It was really expected generally.
Yeah.
The markets didn't think that OPEC was going to do anything different. Right now, oil producers are enjoying the high oil prices, and so the expectation was that OPEC was just going to, continue to stick to that. Although there was some level of expectation that, due to the calls from US and India and major other European countries that are experiencing energy-induced inflationary pressures, that OPEC would actually, probably make some level of difference to increase, oil supply more than what is currently doing. But the cartel is still very conservative in the sense that they just want to keep oil prices where they are, keep them bullish, and that's because there are still some level of uncertainty regarding energy demand, and that's because with everything that's happening now, there's still demand looks quite unstable. It's looking like it's going to be strong, but there are also possibilities that it might taper, and or especially the fact that the US is planning to increase rates, the Bank of England as well. So there's a lot of things happening within the global economic space that OPEC is putting into consideration and saying, let's just maintain what we're doing right now and see how the markets continue to react to it.
And we're seeing, markets, having kind of pullbacks, today, and the ECB, Bank of England, meeting today. But with this additional supply, won't it, taper this oil upward movement of the price?
I mean, if we follow the trend of the gradual increase of OPEC, we haven't seen that much of any tapering in oil prices since this 400,000 barrels per day gradual increase. So it's just basically fingers crossed, because the expectation is that oil prices would probably remain at where they currently are, and even if there will be any decline, it might not be so significant that the markets would really react negatively. So and there are other factors affecting oil prices right now, not just the gradual increase in oil supply from OPEC, supply from other OPEC supply from other oil producing countries are not exactly on the high side as well. There's still limited global supply. There's the Ukraine-Russia tension that's currently affecting, oil prices right now. And not just oil prices, natural gas prices as well. And then there is the expectation of the US Fed increasing rates. That as well is having some impact on the global commodity space, not only oil right now, other commodities as well. So all of those factors put together with OPEC now just increasing oil supply the way it has currently been doing so, what is going to continue to keep oil prices the way they currently are.
Okay, and talking about, production now, we see Nigeria was able to pump about 1.46 million barrels per day, lower than the expected 1.683 million. And we also have the issue with oil theft in the country, about 50,000 barrels per day lost to thieves. That's interesting.
So for a few months now, Nigeria keeps underperforming its OPEC quota, and that's because of this oil theft, vandalism, and all. And this issue has actually been in place for a very long time. The difference now is that we're now at a position where we need more oil than ever. So the news about it is becoming more everyone now is beginning to peek into that particular issue, because there are other factors affecting Nigeria's oil production. There are operational challenges. There are the cost-induced challenges as well. So but right now, this is a major problem that, if not addressed, will continue to affect Nigeria's oil production. And the main reason why this is very important is because changes to Nigeria's oil production is very, very significant. Nigeria is more sensitive to changes in production than price. So even if prices are higher and the expectation is that it would support government revenue, it wouldn't do as much as, when oil prices are higher, because that is where the export revenue really comes from.
Right, and we've seen the external buffers continue that
Exactly.
trend downward.
Exactly,
Is that going to
exactly, and
continue?
that's most likely because right now we're seeing that the CBN is trying to intensify its efforts to, keep the naira stable and keep intervening in the forex market. So, and with the shortfall in revenue, the next best option is the external reserves. We've seen the drawdown in reserves over the month, especially in January, even though. The intervention is still, very low compared to what it was in December. I mean, it's about 40% lower than what it was in December. We're seeing that on a daily basis, this is what is happening. And if you notice, the IFX rate has maintained a band of 415 to 416. The parallel market rate as well, 569, 570. So even if we're still seeing some little swings, we're seeing that the increase in, forex supply to the official window is satisfying some level of demand and keeping pressures, subdued to an extent.
Quite interesting. But how are we doing with natural gas? See, the prices are up.
Yeah, exactly. Natural gas is still, a major contributing factor to Nigeria's export earning. It's a huge factor or a huge commodity for Nigeria. And with the global prices higher right now, due to this same Russia, Ukraine tensions, Russia and Ukraine are major, gas supplying countries. So with this happening and natural gas prices remaining high, it would continue to affect Nigeria. And that's because even though we export LNG, we still import. Nigeria is still a net importer of LNG.
Same
and not
story.
just, exactly, and not just LNG, the other refined products from LNG like LPG and all. That's why we're seeing the price of cooking gas, still high because we're not only importing, but we're now importing at a higher price.
The same story.
Exactly. So
quite interesting.
if the price of natural gas continues to increase, we're going to continue to see that domestic impact. And remember that right now, there's a lot of countries in Europe and the US. There is the currently is experiencing cold weather right now, so that as well is increasing demand for heating and supporting natural gas prices.
Quite interesting. But another issue, I see our currency in circulation is up about 17% to about 3.3 trillion naira in December 2021. So that's a lot of money, a lot of naira
Yes.
in circulation right
Exactly.
now. How does that impact, commodity space?
So the thing is, this has an inflationary impact. And when there's too much money in circulation, it will fuel inflation. And not only that, but also decrease the value of the country's currency. And we can clearly see that, happening.
It's playing
So,
out.
yes, we can
Yeah.
clearly see that happening with inflation and, the value of the naira. But where this becomes very interesting is that, normally when economic activities are booming, when you see an increase in manufacturing activities, you see an increase in demand levels, increase in consumption, you have some level of data to support why currency in circulation is increasing. But in this case, business operations are not as high, manufacturing activities are not as high, agri sector activities are not as high, consumption is not as high.
What's
Demand is not as
driving
high.
it?
So the question, that's the irony. So within the Nigerian context, what exactly is driving this sharp increase of currency in circulation? And the next thing we can look at is ways and means. So there's probably an increase in printing of money or, government borrowing from the CBN, and that is, having some impact in the currency in circulation. Because if you even look at the e-payment channels as well, people are not exactly spending money cash. There's an increase in the value of transactions within the e-payment channels. So even if, the corporate world is, maintaining this, even if the corporate world is, spending, it's not spending cash and all of those things, we're looking at it and wondering why, that we're having too much money chasing too few goods with low demand and low economic
That's
activities.
quite an interesting...
Yeah, so that's where the paradox comes in, and you're wondering, why. But the only, the next best option to look at is an increase in government spending. And that's,
With the
probably
CBN
fueling.
interventions
Maybe not the CBN interventions, but there is the CBN intervening. There is a pool, or there's a there's a pool for that. So the CBN is putting money in the forex market, and we have businesses buying that, forex. So there is a channel of that, and we can see that happening, and we can explain that with what is happening with the exchange rate. But when it comes to currency in circulation, you're looking at the value of your naira within your own economy. That's how much of your money is being spent, and people are not spending as much. Even if they are spending as much, not cash-wise, because and we can see the fact that inflation is high, the value of the currency is depreciating. So even if that was happening, even if we're seeing an increase in currency in circulation, and on the demand side, there should be some level of explanation for it. And a lot of times, the explanation is that business activities are increasing. So even if that is happening, we know that, okay, with some policies put in place, we can check inflation, we can check exchange rate depreciation, because what is happening right now is good for the economy.
The question now is, how do you actually check this?
Check currency in circulation.
Right now.
That's what I'm saying. So it's from what is looking, that's why I mentioned the irony. So from what it is right now, it's for us to check government expenditure.
Right.
Yeah, or government borrowing, basically, ways and means, basically to check that, because that also has its own ripple effect on, the economy as well.
Quite interesting. All right, what's going on with the domestic commodities right now?
Basically, still the same, dynamics playing out. Commodity prices are still high, although we haven't seen so much increase because demand is not exactly as high as it would be. But I mean, January is typically a slow month. People are just recuperating from the festive period. And, some people still have that bag of rice at home. They still have some tubers of yam at home from December period. So it's from now that from February, that we'll begin to see a pickup in demand levels, a pickup in business activities and all. And we could see an increase in demand for commodities. But, the issues issues affecting commodity prices like supply chain disruptions, increase in cost-reflective tariffs, the exchange rate pass-through effect to commodity prices, the lingering forex restrictions to commodity imports. All of those things we'll still see them play out in commodity prices, and that could keep prices elevated in the near term.
Quite interesting. What about the global commodities?
Global commodity space definitely was seeing a lot of activities there. And right now, the Russia-Ukraine tensions are currently affecting both the energy market and the grain markets because they are significant players in both of these markets. So for commodities that Nigeria imports like sugar, corn, wheat, we're going to have a ripple effect on the domestic economy for that because the government's import bill on those commodities will increase. But for commodities like cocoa, that we're still seeing an increase in prices, Nigeria will benefit from higher global commodity prices in that area. Same as well for LNG and oil.
All right, looking at the equities market now, we saw a pullback yesterday. How are you seeing it?
Generally, from the beginning of the year, several analysts were looking at this as just somewhat of a temporal rally.
Right.
And that's because of the dynamics that we're looking at for the year. And that from the low interest rates. So that as well, is fueling some level of, rally in the stock market. We're seeing an increase in, investments in particular stocks. So that as well is supporting the rally. The release of corporate earnings reports, that as well is affecting the rally. But from what we're seeing, from what we saw yesterday, the clearly, we're seeing some impact of the fact that the global economy is going to start increasing interest rates soon. Exactly. And the Nigerian economy or emerging markets generally will no longer be as, attractive to investors. And the expectation is that they'll begin to pull out funds, to garner additional yields from, these advanced economies. And the US Fed is planning to increase rates from March, and we're in February already. So they expect, investors are already having, itchy fingers as well. So that's happening.
Expectations for the Bank of England and ECB.
Exactly.
Today. All right. Thank you so much, Jumebi Eki, research analyst, financial derivatives company. Always great to have you.
Thank you so much.
All right. We'll take a moment now. All right. Now, let's take a look at what's happening in the market with Anyete. Great to have you, Anyete.
Yes, good morning, Ladi.
Good morning.
Okay, well, I wouldn't talk about the fixed income market first, although the stock market, is not much of
Yeah, we had
good
that
news.
pullback
Yes.
yesterday. Yeah.
Yes, we had a pullback. No, although the pullback, it's a good thing because, of course, the market is all about making money. But when you see it in the red, it means people are actually taking advantage of the gains. So the red is
Yeah.
nothing to panic about. But let's
Practically
get
nothing,
straight.
nothing to worry about.
Yes, yes. Okay. So
All
let's
right.
let's head straight first to the fixed income market. And this is how it turned out. The fixed income market, starting with the bonds market segment of the fixed income market, it had, well, it's still unchanged. The average yield there is still unchanged at 11.5%. But when you look at the board here, most of the concentration was on the 22nd of January 2026 paper, which had 13 deals worth about 3.7 billion naira. So, but when you ask traders, they'll tell you, yes, there was an improvement when you contrast to the last trading sessions at the fixed income market. So the total number of deals carried out in that segment was 43 at a value of 22.45 billion naira. And of course, we had investors selling off the January 2026 bond, which it was up by 24 basis points. But then the average yield, average benchmark, the average yield at the benchmark curve it was down by 7 basis points at the mid segment, and then it was down by 2 basis points at the long segment, following increasing demand on the April 2029 paper, as well as the July 2034 bonds paper. So now let's take a look at the Treasury bills market. It also had, it was mixed, but of course it also had a bullish bias to it. Total number of deals carried out there at the close of Wednesday's trading at the fixed income market was 7. And then the highest that we had there was the 26th of January 2023 paper, which had 4 deals at 2.50 billion naira. The total discount there is 5.32%. So there was a much more improvement in that market segment. Over to the open market securities segments of the fixed income market. At that market, its average yield expanded by 25 basis points to 5.5%. But looking at the board here, what we had, the highest that we had there was on the 24th of January 2023 paper, which the discount there is 6%, and then the total value there is 3.8 billion naira in 5 deals. And then the total number of deals carried out there was 11 as at the close of Wednesday's trading session, or what you call midweek trading session at the fixed income market. And then lastly, still at the fixed income market, for the CBN's, the Central Bank of Nigeria's special bills, the concentration was mostly on the 30th of May 2022 paper, which had 13 deals worth about 26 billion naira. And then, of course, it was followed by the 2nd of May 2022 paper, which is later this year, towards the middle of the year. It had 7 deals worth about 12 billion naira at 5% discount. So now, well, to tell us, we would have had, Ladi, I think
All right, yeah, so Anita, yeah, we'll after the break, we'll get your guests to talk more about the market. That's the moment. Do stay with us. This is Business Morning. All right, we're still drilling down on the markets now. Anita, yeah, you can carry on now.
Yes, Ladi, I was talking about the fixed income market. I think I'm done with the fixed income market and then into the equities market. This is the outcome at the close of midweek trading session. The red there, it represents about 97.32 billion loss. Well, not really loss, but taken off from this total value of listed equities on the Nigerian exchange. So, of course, when you talk about the pullback, it was really attributed to MTN Nigeria, which was, of course, our stock of the day as at yesterday. Then, of course, this is the sectoral performance, how it turned out. It was kind of slightly mixed, but mostly red. 3 out of 5. 1 was unchanged, 1 was in the green, and then the rest of the 3 were in the red. No thanks to a pullback from the 4 out of the 5 fugas, what you call, the tier 1 lenders, the big guys in the banking sector, the likes of GT Bank, Access, Zenith. So they led to this 1.39% pullback on the banking sector counter of the NGX. And of course, the market, really reacted to that with the 0.38% drop at the close of Wednesday's trading session. Now, moving over to the activity chart, the total value of shares transactions was actually up by 27.36% at 434.94 million units, and then the value was up by 69.55%, which is quite high. And then, but the deals was in the red. It was down by 8.40%. So that was how Thursday's trading at the NGX turned out. But let's take a look at our stock of the day. Seplat. Yesterday I mentioned I could have put Seplat. Of course, MTN overtook it. But yesterday, it came as the stock of the day on the NGX. And one of the reasons is because, one, its share price has hit an all-time high. At the close of midweek trading session, it climbed to about 872 naira 10 kobo. So investors will be taking advantage of that. And then the previous high was 869 kobo per share on that oil and gas stock or component. It was also one of the major reasons why that counter was in the green. And still talking about the attribute that makes it the stock of the day, it was also the most traded stock on the exchange in terms of volume. It accounted for 964.66 million units as at the close of Wednesday's trading session. And then previously, it was among the top 5 most actively traded stocks, where it accounted for 339 million units at the close of Tuesday's trading session. And still also talking about it being the stock of the day, it managed to rally the market for about 2 days, from Monday to Tuesday, and then yesterday, although we had a pullback, and then of course it's it's still pointing out to be one of the most promising stock to own, and is among the most expensive share price per unit component of the NGX. So if we have our market analyst, Afolabi Benru, if we have him, then maybe he can tell us more about what's going on at the equities market. Okay, I understand. We have Afolabi Benru to tell us more about the market. Thank you for joining us, Afolabi. Okay, so now can you bring us up to speed with what's happening to the share price of Seplat as well as other stocks on the Nigerian exchange? Well, after the pullback, we pulled back from the 47,000 level, which we achieved last about 13 years ago. So give us an update on the markets. Okay. Well,
all right, it looks like we don't have Afolabi there, but it's fine. I have my eyes, on that oil and gas counter there. I see it actually. I just got an alert now that it hits a 52-week high. So you're right with that Seplat
exactly
analysis there. Of course. All right, Nate. Thank you so much for that. Thank you. All right, let's look at other markets. Let's see what's happening in the crypto space now. We see market cap there, $1.70 trillion. It's down about 3.49%. We're having kind of a pullback there. You can bring up the market cap. We see volume traded, $69.02 billion. It's up about 3.20%. Bitcoin dominance, if you can bring up that slide there, you see Bitcoin dominance of 41.17%, up 0.01. And price of Bitcoin this morning, price of Bitcoin, we see it's $37,054, down 3.26%. We see the market is looking quite volatile right now with I see the NASDAQ also having a pullback, and that correlation with Bitcoin and the NASDAQ. Price of Ethereum there, $2,665, down about 3.20%. Once Bitcoin starts that move, it's going to affect the whole market. All right, let's bring in Bjorn Martins now, right there. Great to have you, Bjorn.
Morning, Ladi. Good to be here.
Good morning. All right, Bjorn, let's talk about, minting NFTs now. That's the big thing right now in crypto. We see Ethereum's blockchain is quite expensive, doing even regular transactions there. So what's the best blockchain to mint at the moment?
Yeah, really good question. NFTs are really hot lately. So to really find the correct chain, it's not really easy. Everybody knows Ethereum, everybody uses Ethereum, but we realize it's getting very expensive to use Ethereum. By a simple transaction, you end up paying maybe $50 by sending in the NFT. And for people that want to do a small investment, it's just not profitable. Because of this, of course, a lot of other blockchains has been developed where they are a lot cheaper and a lot more efficient with the gas. And at the moment, I think the best NFT place to be would be the Solana blockchain, as it's more complex to create a project on there, and all the projects there are much more legit than on the Binance Smart Chain or on the Ethereum chain. So to find a really good NFT that has good potential in growing in value, I would start looking at the Solana chain.
Solana chain, quite interesting. We see Meta, formerly Facebook. They're looking at patents in the metaverse. Quite interesting. Tell me about this.
Yes. For example, last week, I think not even a week ago, Mark Zuckerberg took a message out that he won't take patent on his metaverse, and this means that everybody in the world is going to be able to build on top of his metaverse. People like the game Horizon is already started to build inside of his metaverse, and they're trying out games to use inside of it. You eventually will end up in a metaverse where there you see Horizon, Call of Duty, that game, all your favorite game in a street in a different metaverse.
All right, Bjorn. I guess it's all about the metaverse right now, play to earn. Nobody wants to play games without earning money. So it's quite a big one.
Totally true. Totally true. Play to earn is really the thing these days. Everybody want to make money with playing a game. Today we can do that.
Right. Quite interesting times we have right here, Bjorn. All right, Bjorn, thank you so much. Always great to have you on the program. Thank you.
Thank you, Ladi. See you next week.
All right. All right, now let's take a look at the top 5 gainers we have this morning. We see Quant there. It's $127, up about 23.16%. And Internet Computer is back up there, but still on that downtrend. Nobody knows when ICP is going to switch that over and get on some uptrend there. It's been dumping since it came out in about May 2021. It's $21 now. XTZ Tezos there, $3.89. It's up about 3.1%. We see the gainers count is quite lean this morning. We see investors are quite shaken right now. Look at the top loser. We see double-digit gains with the top 5 losers there with Arweave. They're down about 14.74%. And Render Token. Render Token has been on the rise for a while now, but it's trading at $3. First came out at about 4 cents. It's done incredibly well this year. It's down about 10.81%. So traders taking profit on that one. And we see Solana there. Solana below the $100 mark at down about 9.38%. All right, so that's it for the crypto market right now. All right, thank you so much for watching. You've been quite a great companion with me this morning. Thank you so much. Don't forget to join us at 1:30 for Business Incorporated for more updates in the world of business. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Ladi Williams. Bye-bye.